Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Coach Krisler's Convos. Today, I am joined by Rachel. Hello, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you, Krisler?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm so excited to talk with you and have you share a little bit about your health journey. And for those of you that maybe are new to the conversation, that's what we do here. It's just an informal chat with folks about their healthcare journey and how they've used functional medicine along the way. So before we get to that, Rachel, tell us who you are, where you are from, and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Rachel Mogg, and I live in Fort Worth, Texas, and I am a functional medicine certified health coach. I completed my program in August of this year, 2023. So coaching a little bit right now, working on getting a business up and running. All of this stuff is very new for me. So yeah, just kind of working through it piece by piece.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations. I went through the same program and I know what the training is like and how much information you get and what the high standards and expectations are. So well done on that achievement.
Thank you.
Well, let's turn our attention a little bit to your health journey. So first, I guess, tell me what made you get started with wanting to be a health coach?
So that's interesting because I wouldn't say that I entered into the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy with a desire to be a health coach. I was in a place in my life where I had found myself working in research in a corporate setting for about 8 years. And I left that job due to some bad management. And, that was a long struggle that I, developed a lot of anxiety around and hardship there. And I was newly married, and my husband had encouraged me to move on from that. And I just wasn't prepared initially. So it took a while, but ultimately I did. And I stayed home for about 8 months, kind of working on myself, getting to a place where I thought I was ready to enter the workforce again. And then in the midst of COVID, I was offered a position at a local crisis pregnancy center where I had been volunteering. And so I went to work for them for about a year and a half. And again, found myself in a struggle with management. And, I felt the Lord calling me into that position. And so that was something that was challenging to leave, but realized it was truly time to move on. So again, I found myself jobless and staying at home and trying to be the best wife that I could, making sure our home was taken care of every day. And I was really struggling with purpose and wanted to help people. And I knew that was something that always drove me, but I didn't really know how that could manifest in a career. I was really struggling with purpose in my life and understanding my place in the world. I felt like I had tried a couple of different ways to find value here on earth. And I continue to come up empty-handed. And so through my own health journey, I started following Dr. Mark Hyman and received his weekly emails, the 5 things that he's loving that week. And one of the things listed was the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy. And I looked at that, and at first I was disappointed that it wouldn't provide me the credentials to be able to prescribe or to whether that was medication or diet plans, recommendations, those sorts of things. And so I really internally kind of turned away from that. But I did share it with my husband, and he was so jazzed about it and like, this is what you should do, this is where you should go. And I still continue to have hesitation. And really it was through his communication and his support for me, and also to just prayer, that I said, okay, let me try it. If nothing else, maybe it'll help me to be a better wife to him. And so that was really my starting place. My goal through FMCA was to learn how to communicate better with people so that my marriage would be impacted more positively. So I jumped in, didn't know what I was doing, didn't have a plan. And it was really just about being obedient where I was and following the guidance of such a great course facilitator and really just letting the Lord lead me through that process. And it wasn't until probably about halfway through that I saw, man, I could really do this. This is something that I am passionate about. This is a way to help people. And, it's such a sweet way to go about helping people, health coaching, because you're not telling them. You're actually allowing them to come up with the thing that's right for them in that moment. And you're walking alongside them. And I just love being able to support people and encourage people because that's made such a huge difference in my own journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. And what a blessing to have a spouse that is very encouraging and supportive of you in terms of, saying, this is not serving you, leave this place, right? This is not where you belong. Move on. It's okay, And so, I think there's a lot of people who would love to maybe leave their job, but there's a barrier that's holding them back. And maybe it's fear, maybe it's, like fear of the unknown of what do I do next, or fear of a financial issue, or fear of what their spouse might say in response, right? Whatever it is. And so it's really cool that you had that support and were able to walk that path, with such encouragement.
Yeah, I know a lot of people don't have that. And look, I was terrified. It wasn't easy for me. I spent probably 6 months getting to a place where I felt okay with moving on and accepting of that position in my life, and being newly married, like really trusting that somebody else could financially support us. That was a real challenge. And there was a lot of anxiety around it. But I really just felt like that door was closing and I needed to get out.
Yeah. So cool. So you've mentioned that you were dealing with your own health issues, and you started to follow, Dr. Hyman and others. And so what were things that were happening? Were there symptoms that popped up, or, what was going on that made you kind of look in that direction?
Yeah, so I in 2014 got to a place where I had severe bloating and distension. And it was pretty much constant. I got to a place where I didn't really even enjoy wearing clothes. Like the elastic from my underwear bothered my stomach. I was living with a relative and she told me one day that I looked 8 months pregnant. And I was like, oh, okay, this is serious. So I sought out a holistic approach with a local physician, and she really helped me in a lot of ways. I had, I believe, H. pylori, and then I also had Candida. And so that was a long journey to move past some of those things. But I did get to a place where I felt well. And ultimately I stopped seeing her because of, insurance network, and I felt good. So moved on from that. And I would say that journey was about a year and a half. And then I found myself again in 2020, just dealing with very similar symptoms. I had severe bloating and distension after eating. 10 minutes after eating, I would be nauseous, and to the point where I would just fast because I didn't want to put anything on my stomach. It hurt so badly. I even had a very dramatic diet change because so many things bothered me. I mean, eggs, nuts, any sort of vegetables, like the good diet that I had was not serving me even. And so I changed my diet to where I was only eating 7 things. And it was challenging, but those were things that I had found that were really bland and didn't cause a whole lot of negative side effects. So I did that for about 7 months as I was waiting to get into a functional medicine practitioner here in Fort Worth. Her waiting list was very long, which is great because it means she's doing great work. But it was tough for me to wait. And so once I started working with her, she had me do even more diet changes, bring some things back, take some things out. And about maybe 6 months of doing that, I still did not have any reprieve from what I was dealing with. And so that was the point where we did testing. And lo and behold, came up that I did have SIBO. Everything else seemed to be relatively normal. We had addressed some of like the vitamin deficiencies, mineral deficiencies earlier on. And so not only did I have SIBO, but she said it was the highest level she had ever seen in anybody. Wow. And I had the methane form of SIBO. And so the off gas was methane of these fun little creatures that were in my system. And so you can imagine how embarrassing that was for me. I got to a place where I could not hold in the gas. And so it was just a struggle. So I started treatment there with supplements, with different supplements and herbs. And they anticipated that I would need about 6 treatments. And, with my diet change and with how dedicated I was to all of the things that she was recommending for me, I was able to reduce my SIBO level after 2 treatments by half. Well, more than half. And she said that was unheard of. So my level was 63. And she said that in her clinical practice, she had only known people to reduce by 10 points per treatment. And I went from 63 to, I believe, 25 or 6, somewhere in there. So it was huge. It was really dramatic. And that was truly life-changing. But I still wasn't, in a place of good standing. I still had high levels of SIBO. So we did a 3rd treatment. And I was better after that. Did go to Madagascar. And so we wanted to wait until I got back after dealing with travel and potential food differences over there to see if the symptoms had truly resolved. So where we are today, I am still working through that journey. I believe myself to still have SIBO based on some of my symptoms. So I meet with my nutritionist in a couple of weeks to see what the next step is. But that's really what led me to seeking alternative approaches to medicine. Western medicine wasn't helping me. They wanted me to change my diet. And I had already done that many times. And I knew the things that I was sensitive to, but it wasn't fixing things. And, then also too, they threw me on heavy dose of antibiotics. And it was just kind of a throw this at the wall and see if it sticks. The practitioner basically said, maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't, but we can try it. It's like, okay. So we did. And probably that wrecked me even more. But but here I am. I am in a much better place. I don't deal with the symptoms to the degree that I did. And I'm so thankful for functional medicine working to get me to a place of just normal everyday functioning.
Yeah. Well, based on what you said in terms of your dedication to the protocols and the expectations of your practitioner, I feel like self-regulation might be one of your character strengths.
I'm pretty good at rule following. You set me some rules and I'm going to be there. And that's kind of a blessing and a curse. There's some great things about being really driven and a perfectionist. And then there are also some headaches that come along with it too. So yeah, it definitely is helpful, the self-regulation.
Yeah. Well, especially with something like this where consistency matters, patience matters, longevity matters. You have to do all of those things in order to not just see the change in the short term, but have some long-term effects as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So one of the things I also noticed you said was when you went through kind of your first set of protocols and changes, it was about a year or so, that she went through that. And I really want folks out there to listen up, because these things are not, quick fixes. These are things to be done to help you, again, with some consistency, but, building things so that you have long-term change. And so, for some folks, it's less time that they see those changes and they feel those benefits. But for many folks, it does take 3, 6 months, a year to really start to experience some benefits.
Yeah. And I think it's so easy to get discouraged by the process because it can feel really limiting and really restricting. And there is a social component, like as you have a major diet change that is heavily impacted. I took out a lot of activities with friends because my health was more important. And ultimately, I have gotten to a place where I can be more capable of going out, or I choose to go out, but I pack my own food. Mm-hmm. So I don't let food any longer, now that I'm in a better place, cause restriction in my social life. Mm-hmm. And, that was one thing that the head of our ladies ministry at church mentioned the other day. She said, I'm so thankful that you don't let food be the reason you don't hang out with the women in our church. You just pack your to-go bag and you come and you still participate and you enjoy the fellowship. Mm-hmm. And it's really about figuring out what works for you. And if you are dedicated to the process, you will see dramatic changes, but you have to trust that process and trust the one who's walking you through it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So, again, I'm hearing some other character strengths. Certainly spirituality is going to be high on your strengths list, but also perseverance. You've been through a lot in the last 7 years or several years. And yet you continue to push through and do the things you need to do in order to keep your health a priority, but also the other things in your life, don't sit on the back burner anymore. You're like, okay, this is what I want to do. These are the things that kind of feed my soul, and I want to be able to serve others. And so you're doing what you need to do in order to make sure that happens.
Yeah. And, I didn't mention this as part of my journey, but with the SIBO, there has been depression with the job changes. There's been depression with feeling I didn't have purpose. There's been depression. And though I don't know that I would ever say that it was full blown necessarily, in ways that I've experienced it before after major traumatic losses in my life. I mean, whenever I first started this journey with my nutritionist, one of the things that she was asking me to do was also move. And I am the type of person that I come from a long history of being very active and a very team sport oriented person. And Krisler, I could not do it. It was enough to walk my dog every day. And that was more for his benefit than it was for mine. And, one thing that she said is that, it feels like one more thing. It's enough to get up every day and brush your teeth and shower and feed yourself. But then to move, it just feels like one more thing. And so I started with the baby step. And for me, because I am a rule follower, the diet was the easiest part. I was already doing a lot of things that I needed to do. I just had to shift toward organic and grass-fed and pasture-raised. And, I had to eliminate cruciferous vegetables and alliums for a while. But that a lot of times was the easy part. It had become so routine in my life. And functional medicine and this approach and finding relief from SIBO has allowed me to be vibrant again. And I work out every day and my sleep is doing a lot better and my stress management is a lot better. And so just being able to trust that process has brought me into a desire for socialization and a desire for the things that I loved. before I was plagued with such a terrible, gut bug. So
Yeah. I love that you recognize the vast differences and the different areas that have changed, because I'm sure you have found this, but people tend to come to me with a um, an assumption of what they want to change or what they need to change, or they have a specific goal in mind, and that's really where their focus is. And yet, when you start to make those changes and start to make those improvements in those areas of diet and exercise and so forth, you do start to see changes filter out in other places, right? You were dealing with SIBO, but yet, now your gut's not just better, but it's your sleep and your stress management and these other things that are also tied to what you put in your mouth. And I think that's so cool that you recognize that. And I want everybody listening to hear that it's not just about that one goal. Like, take the blinders off, y'all, because there are so many things that are linked, that can be improved by these changes.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, when you look back at Rachel, 3 years ago, 4, 5, 6 years ago, and you see yourself today, what would you say is maybe one of the biggest changes you've noticed?
Oh man, I guess it depends on if you are thinking of physical, tangible things, or if they're, more abstract. So, for me, it was about getting back to a place where I felt good. You know, when I started dating my husband, which was around the time I was first struggling with gut health issues, I was 35 pounds heavier. And my goal was never weight loss, never. But these small incremental changes have allowed me to be in a place where I am like physically more fit than I ever have been, even as a youth. And I feel good about myself. And so those are the physical changes that I have seen. It's not just, the internal, gut health, feeling better there. It's not just the mental health being better there. But I truly have felt like I'm just in a good place overall. And I see opportunity for longevity based on the changes that I've made. My blood markers are so good. I mean, to the point where like, I didn't know you could have a triglyceride level of 32. Who knew? And it's like, that's not necessary. That's never been my focus. My focus has just been to be well. And as a result, I see all of these benefits that you were just mentioning. It wasn't intentional, but it was a great side effect. And, then with the spiritual side of things, I think a lot of the struggle that I had with purpose was looking for the world to define my purpose and looking to other people, whether it was coworkers or my husband or my church family or friends, whatever that was. And this time being off work and having this need for me to slow down and focus on my health has allowed me to grow in my spiritual walk. And it set me up to have time to spend with the Lord, to allow him then to define me, for my significance and my value to come from God and not from anything externally. And I would say more than anything, that has been the biggest shift in who I am today. And, I enter my health coaching sessions. My grounding is prayer. And, that's something about me that I don't want to shy away from. that I am somebody who's driven by my faith. And so as clients have come to me, it's been great that they've been open to, Christianity. And I've been able to start our sessions with prayer and just really commit that session to the Lord and allow the Holy Spirit to move in whatever ways he sees fit. And so I personally feel like I'm just in an overall much better, healthy, sound, available person than I ever have been. And it's been so multifaceted, but the biggest driver has been the way that I now view myself through the lens of Jesus Christ instead of the world, or instead of through a lens of perfectionism.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it provides some permanency. All of those other things are temporary, they're fleeting. And that's where you find that up and down, up and down, up and down with folks when they do find their purpose in those other things. And part of what I do as I'm a professor, and I see this in my students. They define themselves by their major. They define themselves by their GPA. They define themselves by their grades. And it is so hard for me to watch them be uncomfortable in their skin when they don't do well, or they perceive that they don't do well, and that's one of the reasons why I love coaching young people, is because we have morphed education and success and failure and all of these things into these really unhealthy things that people seek after. So yeah, that's really, really cool, really beautiful.
And it's so interesting that you talk about that as a young person, because I think that my need for functional medicine really started around that time. The first time that I noticed any sort of digestive issues was when I was in college, and it started with reflux. And going to practitioners, they told me it was related to stress. And I thought that was absurd, that stress could be causing this. And it's so, so true and so connected. But the solution at that point from Western medicine is to just go on a proton pump inhibitor. And then that really just perpetuates that problem of not having, enough acid to really help us out. So yeah, being a young person, there are so many places that you feel pressure from. And a lot of it is really placed upon us by ourselves. It's not the world and society and our parents expecting us to do unrealistic things, but we believe that's the case. And I think if I had a better understanding of where to derive my significance, even back then, I was a believer. I came to know Christ at 16, but I just didn't get it. I didn't understand how my value and my significance could be derived from anything other than what was around me. And there's just so much freedom in not feeling like I have to play into the expectations of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's another really cool thing about functional medicine, is that it looks at your entire life. It looks at your childhood and even, infancy, or, what maybe your mom did or didn't do in pregnancy, and, all those things as a part of your health journey and where you are now and what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. It's not segmented. And I think very much so when we look at conventional medicine, it's okay, how are you feeling? What have you been feeling? How long has this been going on? Oh, the last few days or last couple of weeks. And, and then that's about it, right? There's not a whole lot that's examined prior to. And so, when you talk about being a young person and starting to experience some of those symptoms that are seemingly benign, they're not really. There's a root to those things, right? And there's a cause, and then they start to add up. You add a little um, an event maybe that has happened, whether it's good or bad, right? It's still a stressor on your body. You graduate, you get married, you move, you have children. All of these things happen, and many of them are very, very beautiful things, but they still affect us. And so I love that functional medicine looks at all of those things.
Yeah. And that functional medicine timeline for myself was just so eye-opening to be able to plot different happenings in my life. I was a C-section baby. I was breastfed, but I was C-section, and my mom was a smoker. And then my mom passed away when I was 17. And then I entered college a month later and moved away from home. And then, that was when, started noticing the reflux and, lactose intolerance. And then my dad passed away at 23. And then there were like these other things so it's just like being able to plot that out really opened my eyes to the things that I was dealing with at the time, the way conventional medicine attempted to address those things. And then ultimately a lot of the things that came on the backside of those treatments. And it was just perpetuation of all of these things and nothing really being addressed. The anxiety, the stress. I mean, I did go to counselors, but, it wasn't like a full health, wellness approach. And so because I didn't have all of the other things working in tandem with that counseling, I think that, then allowed me to continue to have issues.
Yeah. So, give a quick rundown on what your experience was and the difference between going to a conventional medicine doctor and going to a functional medicine doctor. How were those experiences different?
So when I have gone to conventional practitioners in the past, it's been, what are your symptoms? What are you dealing with? How long have you been dealing with it? And the response that I received from a gastroenterologist here in Fort Worth was, well, 80% of America has an unhappy gut. Legitimately.
Red flag. Like, would it?
Yes. Yes. And I thought, interesting fact. Maybe it's a fact.
Right.
But why are we okay with that?
Right.
Why is that normal? And so he said, have you changed your diet? And I said, yes, I know that I have sensitivities to wheat and to soy. So I stay away from those things. He said, okay, well, what has worked in the past? And I said, well, I saw this holistic practitioner. She did these things. With her, the first time I was put on a heavy dose of antibiotic for about 2 weeks and an antifungal for about a month, but she was rebuilding my gut bacteria through that process. And his response was, well, what I hear is you were put on an antibiotic at one point and it seemed to make things better. So let's try that. And I said, okay.
Did you not hear the other things?
No, but I was so desperate, and I just wanted to feel better. And I was like, okay, well, let's try it. And so I did the antibiotic for, the 10 days or whatever, and got to the same. So it didn't really help. So whenever I did go to the functional medicine practitioner or the holistic doctor earlier on, they sat with me for a long time. With my nutritionist, I sat with her for an hour and a half. And I talked about things that I had never considered. I hadn't thought about regarding my past in ages. They weren't things that would come up in casual conversation with people because I didn't see any sort of connection to them, what I was dealing with and my past experiences through life. And she wanted to know about my infancy and did I come from a chaotic home? And what was my childhood like? Did I struggle with anxiety? How did perfectionism play into, the day-to-day for me?
Mhm.
And then it was like, okay, now let's talk about when you actually started receiving help from conventional medicine. What did that journey look like? And what things did you experience in between? Or
Mhm.
maybe as a result of that. And so it was really, I felt heard. I felt like somebody cared about me, like
Mhm.
my story mattered,
Yeah.
and like they really wanted to get to the bottom of this. Whereas I felt like a number with conventional medicine, another person, another somebody to throw medication at. And, in that situation for him, I guess it wasn't necessarily about, prescribing drugs, because he did give me samples, and thankfully, because it was a very expensive antibiotic I was put on. But it feels like you're just a number, and there's not time because of their schedule for them to really hear you. And like you said, are you not hearing her? In that appointment where I'm sharing, it didn't seem like it. And I just felt helpless. And so leaving that appointment, I did what he asked me to do because I was desperate. Whereas leaving the nutritionist, I had goals, I had expectations, I had homework. And at that point, it was, here's what I want you to do. Here are the guidelines, and I'll see you soon. There
Mhm.
was a follow-up scheduled. There was an expectation that I was going to make adjustments, and we were then going to come back to the drawing board and see like what is creating success and where am I still needing assistance or
Mhm.
needing something different. And so, that was one of the things early on was energy. She really helped me to quantify energy, because for me, responsibility is very high on my strengths finder. And I'm just driven by responsibility. Well, I'm getting up every day and doing all of these things to take care of my home because I'm supposed to, because that's my job right now. That's my role. And she was like, yeah, but do you have energy to do that? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. And so, she helped me to say, okay, if you had your whole day ahead of you, what would you do with your day? And I was like, I'd probably sit on the couch and watch some TV. And she was like, that is important, because that tells me your energy is significantly low. And where I would say I have fine energy. I get up every day, I walk the dog, I make the bed, I make lunch and dinner, like all of these things. But for her as a practitioner, she dug into it and was like, I need to know more so I
Mhm.
can help you actually quantify this so we can address it. Like, I never would have been put on the supplementation that I was had I been the one making the decision, because I thought it was fine,
Mhm.
and it's what I've been running on for so long. And so it was just a true deep dive. And her taking the time to pick apart my story, to
Mhm.
dive into it, to explore it, the curiosity, that's where I felt cared for in that moment, was that she truly wanted to know my story.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so empowering too. It just makes you feel like, wow, there's so much to know and there's so much to do. It's not just one thing, one option. There's so many different options. There's so many different roads and avenues you can take towards wellness. And again, it's a journey, right? You get to one point and you're like, okay, what's next? What else can I try? What else can I do? So yeah, so cool, so empowering. Yeah. Well, Rachel, I have really enjoyed our conversation today. And I know there's going to be so many people who hear it and are inspired and motivated to take that step for themselves. So I appreciate you sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so if people want to know more about you, if they want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I have not had social media for years and years and years. And so this is a new avenue for me to explore. So stay tuned with that. I will begin to work on creating a presence so that it makes it easier for people to access me. But right now, Rachel Mogg is my name again, and my email is Rachel, Rachel, the letter N as in Nicole, Stanley, Stanley at gmail.com. So that's Rachel N Stanley at gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, I will make sure to put that in the show description. And yeah, if you guys have questions for Rachel, or you want to connect with her, shoot her an email. She's readily available to chat with you and answer your questions. And for those of you that watch this episode, I would love to hear your comments and your takeaways from our conversation today. Make sure you like and subscribe this channel so that you don't miss any of the conversations. And until next time, I'll see ya. Bye.